most. At any rate, here's a question for you.
Don't you know?
Is it possible in the era of P-Diddy, Jeffrey Epstein and Jay-Z, is it possible to redeem a culture so given over to the world, the flesh, and the devil? Because it would seem from an outsider's perspective that, in fact, this hip-hop culture truly is tainted, toxic, to say the least. But there are those among us that would say it's possible to win souls for Christ, to infiltrate the P-Diddy culture, and to win these souls back. One of those people is a man by the name of Enoch. He's a Catholic rapper. We're going to put links to his X feed, to his YouTube channel, and other outlets in the show notes today. And he joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Enoch. Thanks for your time.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting up early and being on the team today. Praise be to God.
Always.
So, I'm an eclectic dude, okay? I like symphony. I like classical. I like chant. I've been to Metallica and Kid Rock concerts. I've been to, 9 Inch Nails concerts. And I went to a Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre concert, and I hung out with Coolio in a nightclub in Honolulu once. So
Get out of here, really?
I've been all over the map. I've been there. I've done that when it comes to eclectic music. And I remember the 80s. I was there. It was like a magical time when you had LL Cool J and you got Beastie Boys all at the same time. And then, of course, there's that weird dude from Florida called Vanilla Ice. So it has a novelty to it that I think took it my generation and the generation that's come after by storm. But it seems like that's a dark culture now. When Will Smith was being the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that's not the same as what we see today. Today, it seems dark and demonic and possessed almost. What say you?
That's actually a very good analysis. And it's actually very true. If you look back in the late 80s with Rakim, KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, LL Cool J, hip-hop, even when Nas came out with Illmatic, which was a revolutionary album, hip-hop was about the experience of what the urban community was going through. They were just speaking about their experience growing up in New York, because that's where it started. It was the Mecca. It wasn't until the early 90s where executives came in and thought, hey, this music could really shape an entire culture, not for the good, but for the evil. And it was foreign, and this is already news. Ice Cube talked about this as well. He was in the room when this happened. It was executives that came together with foreign investors for private prisons. And they said, the only way for us to fill these private prisons is for us to get the hip-hop culture to talk about gangs, drugs, and killing one another, to infiltrate the culture in order for us to pack these prisons. And they did that very successfully, because Plato does say that you could actually shape an entire culture with music, and hip-hop is that powerful because it's syncopated. It appeals to what we call the lower faculties in a way. And I think it has this place in music, obviously chant being the highest form, symphony being a greater form of music, but hip hop, came out of rock and roll, came out of jazz in a way, has this place. And it wasn't until the early 90s when we started seeing this infiltration of the hip hop music for the lesser good of filling these, destroying these communities, and it worked.
I have often thought about the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? It's something that's written on our hearts. It's inherent to every human being. There's no exception. And I believe that when we hear something beautiful, when it comes to music, we stop and we pay attention. I think that's demonstrated many times in just on the streets with street musicians, when they see talent, when they see something good, something that speaks to the heart, something that is moving. It doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter their cultural background. It doesn't matter what they like or dislike on a daily basis, or what influencer they listen to. They stop. They pay attention. And I find that's true for all human beings. Would you agree that that's true? Or are we so entrenched in our cultural bias, our little bubbles, that we refuse to look beyond our communities?
I think both could be true. I think that some stuff gets diluted in a way, but I think interiorly, the way that man is wired and how God made them, I think that beauty does. You, no matter who you are, if you took an atheist into a traditional high mass, I think objectively they would find it beautiful, regardless of what their beliefs are. I think you're right on that point.
I mean, Palestrina. Who doesn't think Palestrina is beautiful? Gregorian chant, you mentioned that earlier. I mean, we stop, we pay attention to these things. I mean, we don't hang out for maybe too long sometimes, but at the same time, we recognize beauty. Can the same be said for hip hop music and for hip hop culture?
Yes, and I think in a different way, because now all music and all entertainment is just one big canvas. It's an empty canvas when it comes to TV. The artists, regardless if they're painting or they're speaking or they're performing or acting, it's just one gigantic canvas. My personal opinion, when it comes to hip hop, the advantage that it has is that the canvas is bigger. The reason is because you can fit more words in a hip hop song. You can actually tell a story in a hip hop song that's greater than any other genre, because you can there's 3 verses. You got a hook that they can hook the people in. But in all reality, you can tell a story. I did that in a song called "The Passion," where I took this our Lord being mocked and crucified in the Passion, and I put myself in that story. You could go check it out on YouTube. There's a little twist at the end, but you can tell these really cool stories to evangelize. And hip hop being a medium, it's just a form of music. It's not great music, but it is still music that you can actually use to evangelize. And it being the number one sold, the number one listened to genre in the world for the last 20 years, I believe, it would be pretty bad for us not to take something that is just a medium, that is not intrinsically evil, that could be used in moderation, can be listened to in moderation. If you look at the majority of the people listening to my music is folks who work out, because you don't really want to work out the chant. It's just not the right. It's not the right time for it. Or you've got families who, when they're doing chores at night, and they put on my music for the kids. The kids are kind of having a good time getting the chores done. That's the feedback that I've gotten. But in all reality is, there's things that you can do with hip hop you can't do with any other music. I'll give you one last example, if you don't mind. There's things called double entendres, punchlines, where you could formulate 3 to 4 different meanings in 1-2 sentences that people can think about. I think it's an art in that sense, not so much sonically, but it is an art in a way that the artist puts together. I think it's really cool.
You might have a different opinion about this, but one of the things that I get bothered by is, and again, I've got an eclectic taste in music. I've listened to all kinds, but I get bothered by mainstream country music getting so blurred in the lines now that it's hard to tell where pop and hip hop stop and mainstream country music begins. I feel like it's a disservice to, or maybe even a symptom of a toxic culture overall. All culture, not just theirs or theirs, but all of us. It feels like because these things have gotten so confused, we're in a bad way. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think music has devolved as we've seen. I think, particularly speaking of rap itself, I think the only purpose that rap exists is through the lyrics. The music is just the background, just the same way as if you have movies. The dialogue is the most important part, the story. The CGI stuff is just there to hook you in, to get you excited, to get you, to keep your attention. Hip hop has devolved to such a degree because the music has become more the sonically has become more syncopated. Which doesn't appeal to the higher form of music, but also now you have these so-called mumble rappers. You don't even understand what they're saying. So it took the whole part. The only reason that you have hip hop is for the words and the story that you're telling. And now these guys are just mumbling on a beat, and then people just dancing to it, which goes even deeper to the lower faculties of the person. So yeah, the lines have been blurred, but they've been blurred extremely bad. I can't even tell what hip hop or pop is anymore, or any of that. It's just one gigantic noise. So I think lyricism and bringing back the storytelling that's how you evolve hip hop. But hip hop has devolved at this point. I can't even recommend any rapper right now, to be honest with you, for anybody to listen to. I don't listen to it. but going back to the '90s, the guys at least had some form of talent of putting. It wasn't good information they were putting out, but at least they were talented in how they formulated the words and how they wrote and their experience. But now I can't recommend any mainstream rapper. You usually see what happened with Jay-Z and Diddy. I mean, these guys are just the product of the executive. You look at Matthew 4, where the devil gives, ask Christ, if you're a son of God, you could turn this bread, throw yourself and bow down and worship me. He gives us all the same options, and these guys said yes to the devil. And these executives, they have these information about these guys. They make them do sick stuff so they can, so that if they don't toe the line one day and they end up steering off left, they can use that information to break them. If you look at Diddy, he was going against one of the biggest alcohol brands in Europe when he was doing Ciroc. I mean, let's be honest. These rappers and these executives knew about the stuff that Diddy was doing, Jay-Z was doing for decades. Why is it coming out now? It's coming out now. It's because look at R. Kelly. What happened to him? He's in prison now because of the same information. He didn't want to sell his masters. So these guys have been doing this stuff for decades. It's coming out now. Once you don't toe the line, once you try to break away from the agenda, that's when they'll break you. It's tainted. It cannot be redeemed as far as the industry goes, to be honest with you. The culture cannot be redeemed. The only thing that can be redeemed is the music being brought to Christ and using the music as a medium for the sake of our Lord. I think that's the only way to do it.
We're at a break right now. Enoch is our guest. We're talking about what I would say is the toxicity of a hip-hop culture and whether or not we can infiltrate it to win souls. Usually we're talking about infiltration the other way around. We're being infiltrated by that toxic culture. How do we flip that on its head? That's the question. Enoch is our guest. Coming up after the break, I really want to get into that fine line of enculturation. It seems there are many in the church today that want to enculturate every culture. I don't know, the Amazonian right? Anyone? But where does it go too far? At what point do we meet people where they're at and then lift them to something higher? Where does that land in the hip-hop culture? I want to ask that question with Enoch coming up after this break. Don't go anywhere. There's a lot more for you at the top of the hour. Hey, Enoch, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Appreciate having you on the team.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Let's talk about enculturation, because a lot of people today use that as their get-out-of-jail-free card, their wild card, right? I was just thinking about the vestments at Notre Dame with the Uno cards. Anyway, let's not get too distracted. There's a lot of people who I get it. Like, if you're an inner city urban kid and you've grown up in this hip hop culture, and then all of a sudden you are, you're embraced, you are met with, like, just say a youth minister or something like that, or there's Catholics that are talking to you, apologetics or whatever, and you're invited to mass, and then all of a sudden it's Gregorian chant or whatever, and maybe they recognize the beauty, and maybe they see something greater than themselves, but maybe they feel like they're an outsider looking in, and they're struggling to fit in, and they want to experience something that they're familiar with, that hip-hop culture. There are some, Enoch, that would say we have to go above and beyond for those kids. We have to go above and beyond for that community. And we got to take that ball as far as we can. And they kind of use it as their excuse. I believe there's a fine line here and we go past it. What do you say?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'd be the first person to advocate the TLM across the board. I go to the fraternity. I'm a TLM guy. I did do youth ministry for about 10 years. So it's funny you said youth ministry in San Diego. And I think we have about 300 to 400 confirmation students every single year, high school.
Wow.
It was a very large. And you would see a lot of, white headphones in kids' ears constantly. And I'm like, I was wanting to ask them, but what are you always listening to? And they would just name off all of these rappers. And I'm like, wow, it's such a gigantic genre that it's gotten to, everybody's listening to it. But to answer your question, I was approached by, I think, who was it? By a parent. He said, hey, can we do some type of like cool hip hop mass for the kids? And I said, absolutely not. Because it's not. And not only that, you have a couple of Catholic rappers, well, and I will not name, who actually do a concert inside the church right in front of the tabernacle.
Wow.
That's a no-no. That's an absolute no-no. There's a sacred, and there's the profane. And I think that if you really want to incorporate in moderation some type of Catholic, the same thing that we do with so-called praise and worship music, which is just soft rock and roll for Jesus. You do it in a hall where you could have some type of music, some type of concert in the hall or outside. You do it maybe in moderation once every 3 months for the kids or whatever it may be. You can get them together, but you want the liturgy to be what it's always been, the Mass of the Ages. That is going to attract the youth a lot better than any hip hop mass that you could think about, or any bring in any culture. The same thing I would say to those folks is, do it. I've done this before, and that's what I like to do is I like to go out and perform for the youth and the young adults, to speak to them. But see, for me, music is just the Trojan horse to bring in, because the one thing that I think the youth needs to listen to now is the idea of redemptive suffering. Mm-hmm. I think it's we've dropped the ball as far as youth ministers, as talking to kids about redemptive suffering and the fortitude and the beauty of what is suffering. We've lost that. So my main thing is, what I like to do is I like to go perform in a hall or outside, not in a church, for the youth, and then speak to them about redemptive suffering or suffering. And I think you could do it that way. But I agree with you. I don't think it should, other than the TLM, I don't think any other mass should belong universally in the church. People can have an argument between the Novus Ordo and the TLM. I'm a TLM guy.
I am too.
I think it's more efficacious. I think it's better in every way.
Amen.
Even if you took the most reverent Novus Ordo, I think the TLM, give me a low mass over a reverent Novus Ordo.
Let me ask you this. I agree with you, but let me ask you this. So if you're young person and you're into hip hop culture and they idolize the P-Diddys and the Jay-Z's and the Beyoncé's and the Cardi B's, they idolize these people. They look up to them. They want to be them. They want that party lifestyle. They want that stuff. And then all of a sudden they're encountered by Catholic hip hop. Are they impressed? Or do they think it's, or do they look at it like, God's not dead? You know what I'm saying? Like, do they look at it like nice try, sincere maybe, but really the acting needs work? Like, I mean, how do they see that from the outside looking in?
No, that's a good question. I think it's going to depend on the quality of the music and the quality of the rapper. And also it's going to depend on how unique the rapper sounds. If you're trying to sound like everybody, then it's like nice try. It's kind of like rock and roll for Jesus. You didn't make Jesus better. You made rock and roll worse. So yeah, it's the same way. I think it depends on. I know for the longest time, I mean, Catholic hip hop is existed since the late '90s, early 2000s. You had Father Stanford Tuna, who's actually a good rapper. He was a great man. I performed with him before, and he's such a great priest. School of the Eucharist, man. I got this lyric in my head right now. You got that, yeah. And everybody's got to suffer. I mean, he's a good rapper. If you look at outside some of the music, but it wasn't of high quality. So people can look at it in that realm. And he wasn't going for quality. He's the type of guy who's like, I'm just going to put this out because the words matter. But nowadays, with the technology that we have and the plugins that we have, you don't want to hear the original song that I put out, the drafts, because they're horrible. You want to hear the product that's already finished, that's already mixed and mastered. And that's what and I think if you could put out a very high quality product, and you're using the music as a medium, but you're talking about the tradition of the faith. You're talking about the traditional Latin Mass. I have a song called Mass of the Ages. And now you have groups like Found Nation. You have artists like Prodigal. He's a Gen Z rapper. You have guys who are making high quality Catholic hip hop music that I don't think that you can ignore that anymore, because we don't need the record labels and the executives anymore. It's gotten to a point where independent artists can thrive in this, and there's in a way there's a secondary music industry that's popping out that is not part of the executives, that is not part of the record labels, because we don't need them anymore. We have the tools now to bypass them and to bring our music onto the listener directly. They had the money, but very slowly people are starting, because now if you look at Christian hip hop, I'm not talking about Catholic, I'm talking about Protestant hip hop, it's right up there with listeners and views as the other. So there is a way to infiltrate, and there is a way to bring it. And it's being done right now as we speak.
All right, praise be to God. We're having a conversation with Enoch. Enoch, I'm grateful for your time today. Thank you for doing it. Praise be to God.
Thank you.
We're going to put a link to your profile and your all your stuff on our show notes today at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. We're going to get into the after show. Enoch, if you can hang out with us, we'd love to continue our conversation and maybe take some commentary from our audience live streaming right now on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and the Rumbles and elsewhere. Praise be to God. We'll get your take as well. Coming up tomorrow, back on the program, bright and early, 7 a.m. Eastern for another round of A Catholic Take. Do us a favor, share us with a friend. Until then, may God richly bless you. So what did you think of today's show? Let's discuss that right now in the after show. Your take on the after take. Comment, interact live with me and the team. All you need to do is search for one of our live video feeds on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, LinkedIn, and elsewhere. Simply search for the Station of the Cross, Joe McClane, or A Catholic Take. I'm looking forward to seeing you and interacting with you directly. It all starts right now. It's the after show.